Into the calamity of my deepest insecurities. A 15-gram SV10 mushrooms trip report, posted on the Vivec Discord. One thing to note before I say anything, is that this was my first time ever having raw mushrooms, so I don't quite know what to expect. This is not meant to be an encouraging story, more of a cautionary tale. This trip sent me down a curious path of psychedelic journeys throughout my life. I've now done quite a few megadoses of traditional psychedelics such as psilocybin or LSD, sometimes even both at once. Even though this was a nightmarish trip at times, I still understood the reasoning why it was so bad. I also took a lot from this trip, implemented it into my life, but I'm lucky I can take these experiences properly and not ruin my life with them. One person could take this experience and another person, well, probably the majority of people, will not be able to handle this experience in the short or maybe even the long run. I was fooling around at the time with gummies that had half of whatever weak strain of mushrooms in them and half of 4-ACO-DMT. I thought I knew it all after eating 2 packs of those gummies, but I was dead wrong. And I will try to be very expressive in this trip report because this was an extremely powerful experience. It started when I got the connection to a dealer who sells some potent mushroom strains when he can find them, so they end up going quite quickly. I got a drop with a 10 strip of Tamarak tabs, which was fine because it was going to be the first time dropping LSD. And I also got a bag of SV10 mushrooms, which were a cross between the strains Albino, Chodewave and Yeti. The mushrooms reeked, but I was very excited to try them. When I got it, I had a sandwich bag filled about halfway when I held it in my hand. They looked awesome. Pale caps and very blue all around the stems and a little on the caps. When I held them, I needed 2 hands to hold them all. A nice big bowl of shrooms, I thought. I told my friend, who had much more experience than me at the time, that I had what I thought to be 7 grams. I was going to eat them all because I had done what I thought was 6 grams of the mushroom gummies and had some ego loss, but not much. I was not ready for this experience, mind you, and didn't know that he had messed up the bag or just felt very generous and gave me the remaining 15 grams of SV10 he had left. I put the mushrooms on a scale and it weighs out as 15 grams, but naively I don't believe it, and told myself it was 7 because, well, I didn't know what any dose of shrooms looked like really. I also thought a half ounce of shrooms would be a massive mountain that you would need a grocery store bag to fit them all in at the time. So, later that night, I tore the mushrooms into big thick chunks. I put a lot of the mushrooms mixed with Doritos. I heard of someone doing this, so I tried it out. My stoned mind at the time thought it would be good somehow. Unfortunately, they didn't all fit, but I started to eat them anyways. I didn't like the taste and texture of it, so I dumped the chips on my counter and picked all of the mushroom chunks out. So, I went downstairs to look for another option. I decided on the classic method. I made 3 peanut butter jelly sandwiches and went back upstairs and noticed the time was about 7:45 PM. I placed the chunks of SV10 on all the bread slices and they covered every piece of the sandwich in thick mushroom chunks. I consumed everything within 30 minutes, besides a few small mushroom chunks as I started to feel nauseous. I ate a few small mushroom chunks off the little bit left, and then washed it down with water, almost throwing up as my stomach was loaded with psilocybin. I made a mess out of the chips in my bathroom because I spilt Doritos everywhere. I decided I did not like the chip method whatsoever. Now after this I was coming up very swiftly already, so I went to the toilet to clear my stomachache. I started to get a bad gut feeling about this trip. I thought I really knew what I was doing, which was absolutely hilarious. Things were getting frantic and I was having traces already. This was much different than the normal 45-minute to an hour come up that is usual. It was like I finished eating and then I was tripping the next second. My eyes were dilating and things were waving. I started to pick up the mess I made, feeling fairly disoriented and starting to panic for no reason out of fear from leaving a mess. I started tripping hard enough to the point it was, well, hard for me to focus on the chips at all, and I had to clean even though I couldn't see them. The malaise was starting to become more and more prevalent. I kept missing spots, so I lazily wiped them onto the floor. What is going on, is all I could think. Then the bad trip starts. I cleaned up the best I could in the bathroom. I went into my room and turned on the lights. I sat in my bed with my eyes on my knees, scared and feeling worried about something. My mum came in to talk to me about my homework, but I shooed her away and told her I did not feel good and I was just going to go to bed. Felt extremely bad for doing this because she was respectfully telling me to keep up on my work, but I was irritated that she was on my ass about it a few minutes after eating an ungodly amount of mushrooms. I turned off the lights and texted my friend. "Bad trip, we'll be gone for a while," frantically. I started to enter an ego death state for the first time in my life. I was petrified for what is to come. This was an entirely different ballgame. I was used to the happy and fun giggle trips with eye candy and felt like a super dopamine rush. I did not want to believe mushrooms could possibly be this strong. No way. I turned the lights on to see geometrical, rigid motion-like reflections taking place. The room was mirroring while I look at my tall fan. I turned off the lights again, and I began to see the sunrise through my window. The outside world is continuing on while I was in for a rough time. And this hit me hard for some reason. I realised how beautiful life is in such a scary and eye-opening way. I thought of being outside in the June summer evening, with a girl and then with my friends, and how badly I want to be out in the world right at that moment. Everything was so sad to me. I just wanted to stop tripping so badly at that point. I turned the lights back on to be met with a frightening sight at the time. Everything was fake. My ever so precious reality was BS at that point. It took on a fake, plasticky, synthetic experience. I looked at my wall, and within the patterns, I see hundreds of clowns and jester faces popping out and glitching like a Windows XP error repeating over and over and over again. In a vivid, three-dimensional live image, I could feel the jester's anger with me. My room took on a circus-like appearance. I shut the lights off, scared of the hallucinations. I scrambled for the melatonin that was for some reason in my pocket so I can try to sleep this off. Later on, after the experience had ended, I thought it was quite funny looking back on this, but in the moment I realised how real things were getting. I go up to use the bathroom again, but I could not stay up straight to save my life. I was talking to myself incoherently as the waves were throwing me off balance. Everything was way louder than usual, and my audio hallucinations are lagging in and out and echoing. It sounded like I was tapping into whatever is beyond the Matrix. Almost like a ticking noise repeating and echoing and washing over my brain, going at a fast tempo of whomp, 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 whomp. It was a deeply mesmerising sound. I get to the toilet in slow motion and I pull out my pants to see, well, I have no genitals whatsoever. I was pissing a stream out of nothing. The toilet was warped to an odd shape and it was shrinking and growing while my stream was twisting into infinity. This terrified me. So I pulled up my pants simultaneously as I finished using the bathroom and ran back to my room, slamming my door extremely hard from my loose shroom arms. I was mortified that my mother or father would try to ask me what the hell is going on, because it was very, very loud. Time was slowing and slowing and slowing as I went more and more and more mad. I came to the realisation that I was dying. My time perception was non-existent, and I seemed to be looping random thoughts in my brain. It's hard to tell when you don't have another person to confirm if you were or not, because when you loop, you do not realise it. I just realised that this is the end. I've died. I was rolling around in my bed, wishing my agony would end. The next thing I remember was me trying to get up to use the bathroom again. I started to feel great pain and aches all throughout my body. The mushrooms did not want me to move, but it felt like I was falling apart. I laid back down, and the pain went away. I started feeling numb and transparent. I rolled around more and more and trying to get up again, but even weaker now, I ended up crashing my skull into my headboard behind my bed. I slammed it oh so very hard, but did not even feel it. I touched my body to feel that it is numb, completely numb now. It wasn't like a normal numb feeling, it was just nothingness. I speak out loudly. Why? Why is this happening? My voice was foreign to my ears and was very altered from the audio hallucinations. I started to have to use the bathroom again, but I couldn't get out of bed at all. I ended up wetting the bed and my pants as I literally could not hold it in any longer, and I was scared to go into the light because the hallucinations were so powerfully terrifying. This would be annoying later on, as you could expect. As I started to break the veil in this reality to the unforgiving mushroom land, I started to scratch my chest and eyes. I was trying to pull myself back to reality, ever so desperately fighting against the breakthrough. I'd heard of breakthroughs, but this was not what I expected, and I did not realise I was breaking through, because I was so naive to the power of psilocybin. Finally, I forcefully blasted off into the unknown. I eventually found myself in a black void. No, blacker than black, in fact. I was in this void for what felt like years. My connection to the real world was completely shot during this time. And then, of course, the trip advanced, and in this void I noticed jester entities. They see me, get right in my face, and dance all around me, taunting me, making fun of me. It felt like they were laughing at my ego, humiliating me. I kept thinking that every one of my friends would make fun of me for having a bad trip after being so confident in taking this dose. I was tormented by these celestial beings taking on a circus theme for what seemed to be years and years and years. I eventually came to the realization that they were teaching me a very big lesson. I needed to stop being so damn insecure of what other people think of me. Why should I give a damn of what some other dumbass thinks of me? At the end of the day, I'm not going to die if someone tries to put me down. People will always be jealous or think they are better than everyone else. I used to get insecure and angry at people teasing me. A lot of the time, I would always let it get to me very deeply. Other people thinking that I was a joke was my biggest fear. People not taking me seriously. I could even hear them say things behind my back. They mocked me. But at the end of the day, I guess it doesn't matter. I used to do dumb things, and people would react how they would react. It's never going to change, so why let it get to me at all? I remember briefly being in a savannah-like plane. It felt like the afterlife. After this massive wake-up call, I started to exit the breakthrough, but I was still tripping exceptionally hard. I felt like I was no longer human, that I was turning into multiple foreign creatures straight from Tripland at once. My ego dissolution started to weaken, and I turned the lights back on as I was out of the peak, and I calmed way, way down. When I turned on the lights, the room looked very wide horizontally and vertically, as I typically get after a massive mushroom trip. The entire room goes black and white, and then if I had to describe it, an almost industrial hue of deep colours. There were patterns everywhere, and I could see clown faces appearing in the plaster marks on the walls around me. They swayed back and forth with this wide grin on their face. I turned the lights off, then wobbled and stumbled my way to my door. I was leaning against the wall, terrified. I was still so messed up, I started to piss on my goddamn floor. Quickly, I began to realise what I was doing and stopped. I looked at a heating pad on the floor and it turned into a face and was changing shape. It looked like the face of an Easter Island statue. I then looked down at my foot and I could see from the light sweeping into my room between the cracks of my door and the door frame, my foot shrinking and growing intensely. Holy fuck, I said. I'm real, I thought. I fell through my door and fumbled my way back to my bathroom with my phone. I realised it was now 12:50 AM. This shocked me because I thought I aged thousands of years during the peak. I used the bathroom and it was a massive relief to me. It felt as if it was my first time using a bathroom in millennium. I then looked into the mirror to see my intensely dilated pupils. I was frightened at how big they were. I thought my iris could have broken. My face was morphing all about and I couldn't clearly make myself out. I was genuinely unrecognisable. Then turned on the song Use You or Foo by Juice WRLD, as it was the first song that showed up on YouTube. It was echoing very loudly. It sounded like the whole song was playing at once, if that makes any sense at all. I turned it off, and I go back to my room and turn the lights on. I get clean clothes on, and then take a few videos somehow and text a friend that I now understand what he meant by being careful with mushrooms. No one was awake though. This took forever, and time felt impeccably slow. I then smoked some weed and go to bed after putting a few towels on it from the piss. The next day, I felt very odd, in a good way. I cleaned my mattress and had to embarrassingly leave it out in the sun, and I went off to hang out with some friends. This trip taught me valuable lessons that I will never ever forget, but such experiences are not for the average tripper. This trip started my long journey, and I see it as an extremely beautiful experience, even though it was a mess. The moral of the story here is, never trust your ego.